to flow to us. We're one of only 3 cities in Los Angeles County that have that benefit, because when I was mayor and HUD was organizing them, we raised our hand. I've been deeply involved in housing and housing design. As a member of the Community Development Committee after my service on the City Council, I continued the work I did on affordable housing. While I was mayor, I negotiated, actually vice mayor, I negotiated the very first commitment in the state to a set aside of redevelopment funding for affordable housing, 20%. That later became the standard statewide in state law. And as a member of the CDC, we continued to utilize those affordable housing funds to build high quality affordable housing in our community, not just for renters, but also for first-time homebuyers to begin to build generational wealth. I've been a long-time advocate in my roles as a city manager of affordable housing policies, including inclusionary zoning. And as was mentioned in my introduction, the work I've been doing in recent years as a planning commissioner was recognized by Making Housing Community Happen with the Affordable Housing Rockstar Award. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cole and Ms. Williams. Can you see the timer right here on this side? Is your view?
The spatula, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes. We're baking, you're making me hungry. Okay.
So that'll give you about a 10-second warning,
Oh,
okay?
10-second warning, okay. Okay, perfect. My name is Felicia Williams. I have had the pleasure and I'm proud to have served as your District 2 City Council member for the last 3.5 years. A little bit about my background. I was born and raised in Pasadena, and I attended Polytechnic School, Stanford, UCLA, and University of Michigan, Ross School of Business, go Blue. I grew up, my father moved here from Florida. He's African American, and my mom was Filipino American. She immigrated here from the Philippines. So growing up in a household with 2 very different cultures and very different backgrounds was very interesting for me. We had a really fun childhood, but also a very diverse childhood. I would sit at the table and listen to my parents debate different things. My mom was a business owner. She was fairly conservative. My dad is very progressive. And I would figure out a way to meet in the middle. And that's what they would always do. And that's what made their marriage work. And that's what made the 3 of us as kids growing up really proud to be part of that family. I also have a 25-year career in finance, which meant that as an African-American woman, I fought my way up a corporate ladder that was mostly white men. So in my life, in my family, in my career, I have dealt with people who are different than me. And I think that that has been one of the benefits of my experience. My accomplishments so far in Pasadena in my first term, besides getting us through COVID with vaccines and making sure that our budget was stable and we didn't cut services, I've also supported our public schools. We have put city services at the Jefferson campus, which prevents that campus from being empty. It provides revenue for the school. It also prevents a charter school from coming in and taking the campus, which is something that PUSD had talked to us about. I also have a different summer intern from Marshall Fundamental every year. I've been tough on new development. A lot of the development we're getting is luxury housing. It's not the type of housing that we need in Pasadena. So to that end, we have 3 new affordable housing projects in District 2. I've also pushed the projects to incorporate local hiring and also transportation improvements. You know, a lot has changed in 30 years, and we no longer have redevelopment funding. So we need to come up with creative ways to finance affordable housing because we've lost that funding. So I'm asking for your vote in March. I'm proud to be endorsed by Mayor Victor Gordo, Senator Anthony Portantino, Assemblymember Mike Fong, 3 PUSD board members, Pasadena firefighters, and the LA and OC Building Trades Council.
All right, thank you. So are we ready to get to the questions, right? And as Allison said, these questions were curated from a committee of people. My fingers didn't hit the keyboard on them, and so I think they're unslanted from my view. So thank you again for being here. We want to first invite Raquel Calderon up, and she is a member of Pasadena. Is it Pasadena for Now? Yes. For All, I'm sorry. Well, Pasadena Now for All, but Pasadena for All. And she's a District 3 resident, and she will be presenting our first two questions. And for her first question, candidates, you will have 90 seconds to respond, and we will start with Council Member Williams. Raquel?
Hello, thank you for having me. So my first question I would like to direct to the candidates today. Could you please explain what specific actions you would direct the city to pursue by the end of their first term to get us on the path to functional zero homelessness?
Thank you for the question. It's interesting, functional zero, don't really know what the definition of that term is or how many significant figures are in there. But homelessness is an issue that affects the country. There is a housing component, but there is also a services component. The city can control the services component. We have much less control over the housing component, which is really controlled by private developers and state and federal funding. So on the service side, the first thing that we are going to do is we just purchased the Kaiser property on Lake and Villa, and that is going to be for outpatient mental health and housing and substance abuse. And that is a game changer. There's no other model like it in the county and really not in the state, but that addresses the core and root causes of homelessness, but then also allows the people who are in the facility to go into housing afterwards, which has been one of the difficult things to do. So the first thing that I would do is make sure that we get a developer RFP for that project, we get funding, and that we make that project happen in the next 4 years, which will be my next term. Thank you.
Functional zero means that homelessness will be brief, non-recurring, and rare. That is a realistic goal for Pasadena. I differ with Councilmember Williams. I think, in fact, we have more control over housing than we do over services. And in fact, we could have done a lot more earlier, including when our Planning Commission recommended to the City Council the use of church land, which is excess, to be developed for affordable housing and or shelters. There's a great many opportunities for a whole range of housing options for the homeless, from congregate care, bad weather shelters, tiny homes, etc. We ought to be experimental. We ought to declare it, as the City and County of Los Angeles has done, an emergency and treat it like an emergency. And our outreach teams ought not to operate 9 to 5, 5 days a week. They ought to operate throughout the evenings and weekends, because then we only have the police to rely on, and they have neither the time nor the tools. Ultimately, the most important thing is to get people off the streets. One of the main reasons I decided to run was when the staff brought to us the 5-year strategic plan, which was about socks and showers, not about getting people off the street.
Thank you. And for her second question, candidates, you will have 60 seconds to respond, and we'll start with Mr. Cole.
Thank you. My next question is, what would Pasadena look like if we took the need for dense, affordable development seriously? How much density are you comfortable with?
So the more important thing is, which my grandmother taught me, Ricky, she said, a place for everything and everything in its place. I support affordable housing around transit, and I support protecting our historic fabric of neighborhoods that have served our city so well over time. And we shouldn't just think about density as numbers on a chart, but rather our downtown should be a walkable neighborhood. If we're going to have higher density, we need parks, we need wider sidewalks, we need trees. We need to design the new buildings so that they create an environment that will stand the test of time and be within character of our historic heritage and architecture. We can do that in Pasadena.
Thank you. So I think our specific plans have taken care of a lot of this. They focus density in the non-single family residential areas, and that has been something that Pasadena has been doing well. The state doesn't feel that way though, and they continue to overreach and punish the city for doing good planning. And you and I agree that Pasadena has very good planning. So we already focused the density in the places that it should be, but more of the issue is what is going in those buildings, and it's luxury housing. That is the problem, and that's why I amended the church housing ordinance to make it 100% affordable. We don't need market rate and luxury housing on church parking lots. We need affordable housing. We need workforce housing. That's why I've also supported the workforce housing conversion program that takes a lot of the big luxury buildings like Westgate and the Theo and converts them to workforce housing by putting them into a housing trust. Very good program.
All right, thank you so much, Raquel. Ooh, we're making some headway. So we're two in right now, and we're going to move to our next round of questions, and we will start with Councilmember Williams. Let me just enlarge this a little bit. I'm sorry about that. And for this next question, you will have 90 seconds to respond. And the question is, how do you get buy-in for new housing from current residents and get residents to support housing projects across the city? 90 seconds.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, in District 2, we have 3 affordable housing projects. That's compared to the last 12 years, we had 1 in District 2. There's not a lot of development in District 2. But the way we got it done was actually involving the neighbors. You can't ignore the neighbors. You need to listen to their needs, and once you can get the neighbors to support the project, that actually makes the project more viable. So we have 2 affordable housing projects for emancipated foster youth, the most difficult population to house. And the reason why the community supported it is because Pasadena City College will be paying for the rent if they are students at PCC. It's a win-win, and people are comfortable with PCC and they trust PCC, so that's how we got it done. The Salvation Army Hope Center for permanent supportive housing went up in 3 years during COVID. That's unheard of, but from beginning to end, they had no opposition because they outreached to the community and they brought the community on board. Community outreach makes projects better. Don't avoid the community, include them.
So one area where my colleague and I disagree is I think we do good plans in Pasadena, but I don't think we're very good at implementing our plans. And so planning is not just an exercise in making great plans, it's in making great places. I think that one of the critical issues that we do too much of is we do project by project planning. That means that developers and neighbors often find themselves negotiating and sometimes in years-long battles. I think we ought to set the rules up front, and we ought to enforce the rules. And we ought to enforce the rules equally for everybody and not negotiate with powerful developers. Ultimately, affordable housing and homeless shelters and those kind of projects are brought to us primarily by nonprofits, and we should be seeking out nonprofits to create more opportunities and partnering with institutions like churches and our school district to create more affordable housing. How do you get the neighbors to buy into that? I agree, and that we need to involve people, but we ought to involve people at the planning stage to set the rules instead of project by project. For example, the empty hospital at Washington and Altadena. We should be planning now for what kind of use that is. Is it going to be a park, a medical center, an office building, or housing?
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Moving along, and we're still talking about housing production, and we'll start this question with Mr. Cole. And Mr. Cole, you'll have 90 seconds to respond. Production is one piece of the solution for housing, and Pasadena is a unique place to avail of funds from the Tri-City Housing Trust Fund and funds from the sale of the Caltrans-owned homes. And with this institutions like churches that want to develop affordable housing and opportunities to build multiple unit, rehab, and preserving housing, what is your specific plan for housing production in Pasadena? Who are you building for? 90 seconds. We'll start with Mr. Cole.
Well, we have a RENA obligation. That's the Regional Housing Needs Assessment of 5,950 affordable units, nearly 6,000 affordable units over the next 8 years. And we are off to a very slow start on that number. Specifically, I think we need a local source of funding to be able to match the regional, state, and federal programs. We have not had that since 2012, and I think it's urgent that we create an affordable housing source of revenue to supplement these one-time, like the sale of the Caltrans. That when that money is spent, that money is gone. I think it's critically important that we ensure that we're meeting the whole range of housing, and one of the ways to do that is not just to build, but to acquire. I've knocked on a lot of doors in some tough parts of District 2, and there are a lot of run-down apartment buildings and housing stock that the city, in partnership with nonprofits and churches and others, could acquire, rehabilitate, and make permanently affordable housing.
Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, cities don't build housing. So it's very difficult for cities to do that, and we've lost our funding source. So we do have a new source of funding, which is the Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena Housing Trust. So we do have local funding, and that was funded by Senator Anthony Portantino, so we do have funds to be able to do that. And we are partnering with entities. We have partnered with nonprofits, the Salvation Army. That's how they built the Hope Center. It was the city, the county, and the Salvation Army. And they got federal funding. Another one, an example that a lot of people haven't heard of is Door of Hope. And Door of Hope just is purchasing a house, and they are expanding, they're doubling the size of the families that they can serve through Door of Hope. So we are partnering with local nonprofits. We are providing funding to them, and those are our sources of funding. But you mentioned St. Luke's, our favorite project in Pasadena. What do you do when an owner won't give up the property? And that's what it is with those vacant homes. I've been here for 4 years. I've been here for 17 years. I have been in the community. I've been doing community service. The owners will not give up those homes. So what I had proposed last time in 2020 was a vacant building tax. I think we need to revisit it. And then the funding can go towards homeless housing and other projects. But if those property owners, some of them, that house on Chester's been vacant for 25 years. And so we need to actually force the owners to give up those houses so they can be used for what they're supposed to be used for, housing.
Thank you. And we are moving right along, and our our next question, we're going to speed things up a little bit. You've had we're going to speed it up just a little bit. I think you're getting comfortable with these long-winded answers, so we're going to put a little bit more pressure on an issue.
Trust me, when it comes to housing, a minute and a half is not long-winded.
We're talking about protection for tenants. The Pasadena Rental Housing Board is a new body in our city, created by the voters, approved by Measure H and the Fair and Equitable Housing Charter Amendment. As a part of that amendment, the members of the Pasadena Rental Housing Board are appointed individually and collectively by the council. How do you intend to support this new body and this new law? You have 45 seconds.
45 seconds. Oh, is it me?
I think we're starting with yes.
Okay, so me. So I've been very vocal in the newspaper. Measure H is not working the way it was structured. There are a lot of legal problems. In fact, half of the budget has been spent on legal advice. So I think that in November, we need to amend Measure H so it actually works and the tenants can actually get protection, actually get relief, and the landlords can work with them as well.
You have all the time you need in 45 seconds.
So part of the challenge is that a group of landlords are suing and you are going to appoint one of the plaintiffs to that board. I think the board needs balance, but I don't think it needs someone who's trying to take it apart. And if we are going to have amendments in November, now is the time to sit down with the proponents and to begin to talk about what shape that should be, rather than have an antagonistic process. You complain about Measure H, but had the council had a more collaborative approach with the 60% of the people in our city who are renters, perhaps Measure H might have turned out differently.
Thank you. Only 10% of the renters, I'm sorry, I need glasses. Only 10% of the renters who appear in landlord-tenant unlawful detainer courts are represented by attorneys, while 90% of landlords are so represented, resulting in tenants typically losing their case and being evicted. Would you support the city providing money to fund legal representation for low-income Pasadena tenants appearing in landlord-tenant courts? You have 60 seconds to answer. We'll start with you, Mr. Cole.
When I was city manager of Santa Monica, the council voted to move in that direction. It is challenging because, as we've read in the newspapers, finding attorneys who will take that level is a real challenge. I think low-income folks really are disadvantaged in our legal system, period. And I think that we should explore ways in which folks who are disadvantaged in our legal system have the ability to defend themselves. Look, there is nothing more precious than having a roof over your head or the roof over the head of your family. And while there are bad tenants and there are needs to evict people who are breaking their lease, everyone should have a fair shake in a court of law.
So I would support funding for legal representation as well. We have the Housing Rights Center, and so we already have a model where we could expand that. It would be an issue of where do we find the funding. And some of that funding, quite frankly, should come through Measure H, but that hasn't been contemplated in Measure H, so we don't really have that option. Again, we need to reform Measure H. And for the November ballot, it's not just the proponents of Measure H, you also have to talk to the opponents. That is democracy. So that is the problem, is that the opponents and the landlords have not been able to have a say in it, and that's why they are suing. That doesn't help anybody. And $3 million this year, $6 million next year of taxpayer money is not helping us, and we have to cut services, including homeless housing and other things that we could use the money for. So, so you need to have everybody included, you need to have democracy, and we need to reform it in November so that we can actually get relief out to the tenants. Thank you.
We only have 99 more questions to go, so you guys all right? You hanging in there? All right, we're getting through them. Would you support, and we'll be starting with Councilmember Williams, would you support a vacancy tax? We have luxury buildings that are vacant and can keep it vacant, and can keep vacant, more regulations of Airbnbs, and better enforcement of penalties. You have 30 seconds to answer.
Yes, yes, and yes. So Airbnbs are housing. And in all honesty, it confounds me why the state hasn't banned Airbnbs. I'm just being honest with you. We should not be using housing for hotels. We have hotels. Housing should be used for housing. I support a vacancy tax. I support limiting home purchases to owner-occupied, and then having a different rate and tax if it's not owner-occupied. And I think a lot of those would go a long way to preserving housing as housing.
I have sympathy for a vacancy tax, and I certainly have sympathy for protecting the housing stock in our city. One of the challenges, though, is actually getting stuff done, right? Being a policy leader verbally is not the same as getting actual action and things passed. And so, again, there needs to be, as you were just saying, Councilmember Williams, a broad and collaborative effort to think through how is all this going to work. Just an example, not from the housing world. Are we done with 30 seconds? Okay, sorry.
He has the time.
Okay, apologize, it's the 30-second question, and I was giving it a 1-minute answer.
I think, were we timed? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes, sir. You are out of time. All right.
I figured that out on my own.
There's a reason I don't have the clock. All right, folks, well, we're actually really coming down to the last 3 questions. And so we're making good time, and I appreciate the candidates for being here. One of the other subjects that came up is public safety, and that's kind of how we'll transition into these last 3 questions. And what policing standards, if any, do you feel your district needs or must have? What policing standards, if any, do you feel your district could do without? And we're going to allow the candidates to have 90 seconds to answer that question. And I believe we're starting with Ms. Williams. Is that correct? Yes, 90 seconds.
So in terms of policing standards, District 2 is one of the biggest complaints we get is that District 2 wants more police on the road, especially for traffic enforcement. So we need to be able to listen to that and also balance out the civil liberties of people who are interacting with the police. But we can also do that longer term by taking care of a lot of the root causes of violence in our community, again, stem from things like mental health, domestic violence, trauma, those sorts of things. And those are things that we are ignoring in the whole piece of crime. So I agree with some forms of criminal justice reform. I believe that we could modernize our police. We have to modernize our police, and we need to have better policies, including policies that treat pretext stops better. That's one of the big things that we are looking at in Pasadena. But fundamentally, we're going to get a call, whoever it is, we're going to get a call from District 2 residents that they want more police on the street. So that's a balance that I've tried to create through community policing, through block walks, where we have the police go out and walk through the community so that the community knows who they are. And then we also reformed the street crimes unit, which is dealing with a lot of the smash and grabs in Pasadena that are a very, very big problem. And a lot of the street crimes, including Amazon packages. I hate to say it, but that's a big deal in District 2. Thank you.
There has never been in my lifetime a time when the questions around law enforcement have been more fraught. And Pasadena used to be a leader in progressive policing. The Pasadena way is really steeped in the idea that Pasadena would, before community policing was a thing, would work with the community. I think we've become complacent about the very things you're talking about, Councilmember Williams, that holistic approach to crime prevention, education, families, neighborhood, all of us pulling together to prevent crime rather than to react to it. One piece, though, that we really should be moving forward on right now, and that is unarmed response, where we don't need to send folks who are both very expensive, very well trained, and very scarce to deal with problems that they don't have the time or the training to solve. And that's an important piece that I think Pasadena, again, should be a leader. I think we've lost our way in terms of thinking of ourselves as a leader across the board, but especially in community safety.
All right, thank you. Budget disparity on public safety. Why aren't we seeing the housing department budget increase? You'll have 30 seconds to answer that. I'm starting with Mr. Cole.
You know, I'm the only person on this stage that's had the responsibility of managing a police department and its budget in 4 different cities. And I know that police get away with saying that the things they need are non-negotiable and everybody else is negotiable. I think that's short-sighted. And I think there are ways of saving money inside police departments and actually improving our safety. One word, overtime.
Second word, the Rose Bowl. That's your overtime. So as a city manager, you should know that the police are funded by the general fund and housing is funded by HUD. So we actually can't increase the budget for housing unless we increase the funding from HUD. So I would actually rather have a comprehensive approach to homelessness that is not in the housing department, so that is not something they have to deal with, and we put it in human services so that it can be dealt with from human services and housing, and that would actually increase the budget of the housing department for other things.
Mr. Cole, we're not rebutting. That's a different format, but we're not doing that right now. But both of you can come back on the conversation live, and we can talk it out.
Or 6 a.m.
Or call in tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I mean, there are other places we can do this dance, all right? We are coming to our last question of the evening. And again, thank you, candidates, for being here. And please, no one update the 49er Detroit game. We'll get to that later on. Public safety includes the safety of our unhoused neighbors and the stability of our neighborhoods. We spend on police equipment. What about other services support for the community that protect residents that are not weapons, like housing, additional mental health support, and mental health services? You'll have 90 seconds to answer that question.
C'est moi?
We are starting with Ms. Williams, correct? Yes, you were last.
Okay, so once again, I'm mentioning the project on Lake and Villa, which is the former Kaiser site. Now that embodies all of the things that you were talking about because it is mental health services provided by the county that are not currently provided in Pasadena. So normally, if you have a substance abuse disorder and you are you have a mental health disorder, your dual diagnosis, you have to go to 2 different places to get treated. And that is what prevents people from actually getting better. And how do I know this? One of my relatives was homeless on the streets of Pasadena and was brutally murdered. She could not get substance abuse help. She would go in and she would go out. She had a place to live with us, but we could not get her services. And I'm with the city. And my sister worked for the county. We could not get her services. So we need to do this. There's not an option here. We shouldn't politicize the issue. People need services, and we need to provide that. And we are going to do that at the Kaiser facility on Lake, and we are also going to do that with housing on top. And so we're going out for RFP this summer, and so we'll have an idea of what that looks like in the next few months. But we need the community support. We need your support, because this is a difficult project. No one else has ever done it before, and we're going to make it work so that we can actually provide solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
So let me begin by apologizing for going outside of my time. The point I wanted to make is that, yes, our housing authority is funded by HUD, but there's no preclusion of using general fund dollars for housing, nor is there any exclusion of us having an affordable housing local source. But look, the Kaiser site is a great opportunity, and I think Victor Gordo deserves a great deal of credit for spearheading that, and I know that you've been a partner with him on that. But where's the discussion? 9 months have passed since it was announced. Where's the discussion in the community about how this is going to work? We have seen these kind of projects blow up in the face when communities, as you said before, are not involved in the project. There's been, and not just the neighbors, the business and residents, but all of the people in this community who have lived experience, who have professional experience, who have worked very hard on this range of issues, service providers. We should have a very robust discussion about how to make this once in a lifetime, once in the nation effort. And there has been silence from City Hall about what this might look like. And we have to work with a massive bureaucracy, which is the county. And that part is going to be a tricky part to make this all work.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cole. And thank you, candidates. We are ready to receive your closing statements, closing remarks, and we will start with Mr. Cole.
I started on the opening. Could we have...
Yes, we'll start with Ms. Williams. You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
You can use as much of it.
Where's the bell? Oh, the spatula. Okay, so I'm actually going to continue on some of the things that I have done in the district. So in addition to, there's a project called the Affinity Project on Arroyo Parkway, and that's a big project that the Carpenters Union has supported. You may remember that from the Planning Commission. But that is one of the first projects in Pasadena that we pushed for local hire, transportation improvements, and increased affordable housing. So it can be done. We can work with the developers to do this. We also worked with Huntington Hospital. The new building will be all local hire for that. We worked with the USC building, and that's local hire as well. Because fundamentally, if the people building the building can't afford to go to the doctor there or can't afford to live there, then we are making the problem worse as we continue. So for my next term, these are going to be my focus areas, and I want to address the root causes of homelessness. And that is something that is personal to me. This is not a political agenda for me. This is something that's personal to me. The root causes of homelessness, there's a portion that is housing, but we tend to ignore the social services side. So substance abuse, mental health, domestic violence, and trauma. The #1 cause for families to go into homelessness is domestic violence. And again, we don't hear much about it. But I'm the only council member, as a woman, I'm the only council member talking about domestic violence. Because it's hard to talk about. It's painful, it's scary, but we need to talk about it, and we need to expand our services. So I'm working with Peace Over Violence to expand awareness for domestic violence and to increase our services for domestic violence. The Center on Lake and Villa will be helpful. We had a press conference there. We also had several city council meetings on it. You weren't there, so maybe that's why you didn't get the update on it. But it's been in the newspaper, and we have been outreaching, and that's part of what the developer will do as part of the RFP. The second thing I'd like to do is really continue with community policing and updating our police department so that it can serve our residents, especially with crime increasing. But also serve them in a way that is respectful of people's civil rights. Lastly, I want to create good jobs for our students here in Pasadena. We are building a bioscience hub. This is one of my biggest initiatives for my next term. Bioscience jobs, 68% of them don't require a high school diploma, and the average salary is about $100,000. These are really good jobs. They are not jobs that are being transplanted from somewhere else. We have a growing tech industry here. We have General Motors designing all of their new cars here. We have 3 biotech companies coming, and these are great opportunities for our students. So we can fund that through career technical education expansion, and then we also need housing at all levels to be able to support that so that your kids can come back and live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cole?
So, Councilor, let's talk about record on domestic violence. When I was serving on the city council, the council turned down a domestic violence shelter on Lincoln Avenue because the residents of Lincoln Avenue said, we have our convalescent homes, halfway houses, drug treatment facilities, and we're over-concentrated with these. I stepped up and said, if you can find a site in my district, I'll go to bat for it. And we went out and we knocked on the doors of the folks in that neighborhood, and we got a meeting of 150 people. And I said, look, you can talk about parking, you can talk about signage, you can talk about hours of operation, you can talk about staffing. There are 2 things you can't talk about. Those people, because they're people. And number 2, why does it have to go in our neighborhood? Because everyone says that. And if we have to have it somewhere. So we worked our way through all of those issues. And at the end, we had a postcard poll, and 60% of the people said they wanted to have that in their neighborhood. At Palm Terrace in Washington, it's operating there to this day. You'd never know it's there because we don't advertise where domestic violence shelters exist. I've been on this issue. I care about this issue, as I know you do. And it is personal for me, too. It's not political. I've had the same kind of experiences that you have. We all should treat this as personal. We all should treat this because every one of them is someone's child or uncle or parent. And to leave over 300 people out on the streets of Pasadena every night is a tragedy for them, and it is an emerging catastrophe for our community. We begin to lose we begin to desensitize ourselves. And when 60% of the residents of this city are renters, and more than 1/3 of them, tens of thousands of people, are spending more than half of their income on rent, that is a crisis. And when those folks who are living, the young folks who are living in those rental apartments, can never save, and literally have no opportunity or hope in their life to ever own a home, as you and I have. That's a crisis. And so you and I both care about these issues, and you and I both are experts on these issues. Here's what I offer if I have a term in office again. This will be job one from day one. Thank you.
Can we give both of the candidates a round of applause again? Again, thank you both for being here this evening. I can't tell you how incredibly difficult it is to not be able to ask a follow-up question. So this is an exercise in restraint right now. But thank you so much for being here. The candidates will be available during the intermission if you'd like to talk with them. I'm going to turn the mic back over to Allison Henry, and she'll give us instructions on what's happening for the rest of the evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks again, Felicia Williams and Rick Cole. Really appreciate your time, your energy, answering the questions. Appreciate all you. We want to give another shout out to All Saints Church for having us here. Yay. LA Progressive, Pasadena for All, LA Forward Institute. So please take time during the intermission, talk with the candidates. We're actually a little bit ahead of time, if you can believe it. I know. I guess that's James doing so much conversation live. It's just like, moving us through. So our next forum will start at 6:45. So please take your time, enjoy the food and beverages, speak with the candidates, and thank you for your attention.
becoming that city's chief deputy controller, overseeing accounting, payroll, and audit functions of about $13.2 billion. Rick Cole grew up in Pasadena, attending public schools, serving as a student body president at Blair High School, where he was an outspoken youth leader during the struggle to integrate Pasadena schools. After college at Occidental and graduate school at Columbia, he returned to Pasadena and was elected to the Pasadena City Council in 1983. After 12 years on the council, Rick was selected by Azusa and its city manager in 1990.
go ahead and bring it back. Hope everyone got some refreshments, got some time with the candidates. So actually looking at like the room, we're just going to go ahead and get into the next forum, which is our District 3 forum. All right. So District 3 has 2 candidates running for the seat. I'm going to read the bios of the candidates before we have them join us on stage. The first, Councilmember Justin Jones has dedicated his career and life to serving the community. He was born and raised in Pasadena and is a product of the city's investment in its residents. Both the Pasadena Unified School District and the City of Pasadena stood as the foundation for who he is today. The City of Pasadena staff poured into his professional knowledge as an interim in the Rose program at Pasadena Water and Power and an engineering intern for the Pasadena Public Works Department. He is a graduate of the Pasadena Neighborhood Leadership Institute, and these experiences have given him the tools to advance his career and serve the community. Councilmember Jones is a licensed civil engineer and an associate civil engineer with the Los Angeles County Public Works. His current role is to help administer the Safe Clean Water program, which provides local dedicated funding to increase our local water supply, improve water quality, and protect public health. In addition, he is also the former chair of the Pasadena Environmental Advisory Commission and was the former chair of the Pasadena Human Relations Commission. He is also a Pasadena Water and Power Stakeholder Technical Advisory Group member for their Power Integrated Resource Plan. Councilmember Jones is an avid reader, gym enthusiast, and has been happily married to his partner, his wife, Natalia Romo Jones, for 5 years. Our second candidate is Brandon Lamar. Brandon Lamar is a dedicated public servant and a native of Pasadena. He was raised in Northwest Pasadena and proudly attended Edison Elementary, Elliott Middle School, and John Muir High School. He's running for Pasadena City Council to build a bridge between the residents of District 3 and City Hall. At a young age, Brandon became involved with various community programs, including Pasadena Youth Ambassadors and the Pasadena Youth Council. In his early 20s, he became the chair of the Youth and College Division and the third vice president of the Pasadena NAACP. Soon after, he was appointed by Pasadena Mayor Terry Tornick to the Human Relations Commission, where he currently serves as the chair. As the chair, he's led the efforts in making recommendations to the City Council on the prevention of hate crimes and encouraging our council to correct our wrongdoings concerning the history of racial injustices within our city. Brandon's career path led him to a series of roles in the nonprofit and advocacy sectors. He served as the director of programs for the LAPD Hollywood Police Activities League, where he led programs and advocacy efforts on issues related to poverty, education, mental health, and community engagement. He currently serves as the California Director for a national nonprofit working to address racial disparities and other social injustices in our juvenile and child welfare systems. Brandon's service includes Vice Chair of the Pasadena Rental Housing Board, member of the Steering Committee for Measure H, founder of Merge Black Pasadena, co-chair of Pasadenians Organizing for Progress, POP, former chair of the City of Pasadena Human Relations Commission, chair of the NAACP Economic Development and Housing Committee, board member of Leadership Pasadena, board member of Young and Healthy, member of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for Measure PCC, founder and president, Pasadena Young Democrats, and chair, Local Project Labor Agreement Coalition. Pretty long list. So with that, I'm actually going to first invite James Farr up for an announcement before our candidate takes his seat. Thank you.
And we will also go ahead and welcome Brandon up as well. Good evening. Thank you for those of you who have stuck around with us, and for those of you who are watching live on Facebook and YouTube. We had a very interesting conversation a little bit earlier with Council Member Felicia Williams and her opponent, Rick Cole in District 2. And now we are going to move into District 3. And as evidence, we only have one candidate here today. So We will only be able to speak with Brandon, and so he's not so lonely up there. Of course, I'm not Justin Jones, but we'll make it a little bit more intimate, and I'll go sit. All right, so we'll sit this to the side. Yes, thank you. And so first of all, I want to start out with some truths before we jump into, we're going to run the same format that we did earlier today, but we do want to kind of set the record straight. An invitation was extended to Council Member Jones to participate in tonight's forum. That invitation was sent out weeks ago. Unfortunately, the council member has not returned any request to participate in this forum, and we honestly didn't know up until right now if he was going to actually accept the invitation, but he did not formally decline the invitation and has yet to return at least a dozen communications to invite him to participate. That's a truth that I just have to tell and set the record straight. So Brandon, thank you so much for being here today. This wasn't the format, but we're going to go ahead and run through these questions. Your mic on?
Testing.
All right. So we're going to ask about 10, 12 questions. We're going to give you some time to respond to each of those questions. We're going to allow you to have an opening statement, and that opening statement will last 2.5 minutes before you start. Our timer is right there. But in fairness to time, we will allow Mr. Lamar to finish his answers. It's on you.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Brandon Lamar, born and raised in Pasadena. I ran last year, got 41% of the vote, and you all know the end of that story. And so I decided to run again because I believe that District 3 is the most diverse district that we have in our city, but it's also the district that has the most complex needs in our city, and the injustices that we have continued to see. We saw an injustice with the appointment process, but I'll leave that alone as well. You can do your own research. But we're going to talk about some stuff, so I won't go all the way into that opening statement. I'm happy to be endorsed by every single elected official who represents my district, from school board, Michelle Richardson-Bailey, Pat Cahalan, PCC board member, Steve Gibson, Assembly member Chris Holden, Senator Anthony Portantino, and Congresswoman Judy Chu. Yeah. And of course, on our city council, I have the support of Councilwoman Jess Rivas. And so I am so happy to be here. Also, just to let you guys know, I have been endorsed by over 8 unions and a whole lot of community partners. And so I'm a grassroots organizer who's glad to be here with you guys. This is just not a position for me, I have to tell you. This is something that I care deeply about because there are people that look just like me and you, that are our family members, that are being priced out and gouged out of our city. Public safety is a big issue in my district, and we have to have somebody who knows what they're doing to tackle these issues and not just be a footstool. And so I'm excited to be here with you guys and looking forward to engaging at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm going to invite Raquel Calderon up. Raquel is a District 3 resident, and Raquel is going to ask 2 questions. Her first question, you will have 60 seconds to respond, and then I'll let you know about the second question. Raquel?
Since I'm debating or doing the form against myself, is that 2 minutes or is it 60 seconds? I'm playing. I'm just playing. Just joking, guys, just joking.
That math ain't mathing, okay?
Thank you. Please explain what specific actions you would direct the city to pursue by the end of their first term to get us on the path to functional zero homelessness.
So A couple of things. Number one, in our last count, I believe we had about 556 homeless people. And just to make a note, I was out there the last 2 days of the homeless count, counting myself. And so this is not something that I sleep in on and let you guys count. I'm out counting as well. Some of the things that I think that we really have to do is we have to stop putting a Band-Aid on homelessness. And I believe that with a city of 145,000 people, we can end homelessness in 365 days if we really chose to. Can I tell you why? Because we put 6 figures in putting our homeless into hotel vouchers, when that can actually go to permanent housing, permanent supporting housing for our people. You know how I know? Because I used to work in homeless services. So I think that's the first thing, is that we have to start re-looking at our budgeting. Instead of putting Band-Aids on things, we can actually come up with actual solutions to these issues so that we can address our homeless population. There's definitely more things that I can say, but 60 seconds is, I feel like I'm at a city council meeting. Sorry.
So my next question is, what would Pasadena look like if we took the need for dense, affordable development seriously? How much density are you comfortable with?
90 seconds.
I don't think it's just about creating more dense, affordable housing. We have to make sure also that the people who are housed stay housed. Because we can create housing all day long, but if people don't stay housed because they continue to get gouged out or they don't have any protections as a tenant, then we'll see ourselves continuing to build, because we have to continue to rehouse people, right? And so I think the first thing is, yes, I believe in affordable housing. I believe in mixed housing, and I think that we have to have a robust plan to build rehousing or affordable housing. But at the end of the day, I think that we really have to work towards the goal to making sure that our neighbors actually stay housed. And if they're staying housed and they're comfortable in those housing, and they don't have mold on their floors and on their walls and unhealthy housing conditions, then we can look at other options. But I definitely believe in affordable housing. How much density should those housings be? I can't tell you at this present moment, because I haven't thought about it. But I do think that we need to build as much affordable housing as we can, because I haven't seen housing prices or even rent go down at all. So that's a concern of mine.
Thank you. Thank you, Raquel. And Raquel is a resident of District 3 and with Pasadena for All, right? I got it right this time, all right. Thank you so much for your participation. And moving on to our next question. Care courts have been established to institutionalize some mentally ill, houseless persons who are considered disruptive. What is your position on the use of care court? 60 seconds.
So I'm against criminalizing homelessness, let me say that. I met a homeless guy who fell into depression and had a master's degree from Pepperdine. And the only reason why I knew he had a master's degree from Pepperdine, because out of his sack, he pulled it out, and it matched his ID. And so, we have to rethink the way we look at homelessness. It is not a sin for you to be homeless, but we have to do what we can to help you get off the streets. Care Portal, I think, is a great system, but I think we really have to revamp and create our own system in Pasadena on how we develop our homeless population, and making sure that even within our homeless population, we have people who are qualified to deal with our homeless neighbors. We have to stop separating our homeless neighbors as their own population, but they are our neighbors. They're people who live right next door to us. And so I think that's the system that we have to go into. And you guys have to forgive me. I'm trying to really get used to this red flag up here. Andrew is doing a good job at being Mark Jomsky.
That's your time.
Yeah.
For that question.
Ding.
All right, moving along. Production is one piece of the solution for housing, and Pasadena is a unique place to avail funds from the Tri-City Housing Trust Fund and funds from the sale of Caltrans owned homes. And with institutions like churches that want to develop affordable housing and opportunities for building multi-unit rehab or housing to preserve housing, what is your specific plan for housing production in Pasadena, and who are you building for? 90 seconds.
So yeah, I think number one, when it comes to the production of housing, I think we have to look at our zoning process, and we have to look at rezoning in Pasadena. At the end of the day, what we all saw is that you don't need a brick and mortar building to do your business, and a lot of people and businesses have closed down those brick and mortars, and so you see a lot of those that are in Pasadena, but nothing can be done with those buildings because the right zoning is not in place. And so I think that we have to change our zoning laws in Pasadena to really look at building more affordable housing units. Number two, I think what making community and housing happen is a good tool, because they have been nonstop advocating for affordable housing to be built on religious land. And I wish that we can take more stands as a city council to make sure that our communities are being housed. One thing that I will note is that we cannot house our community together. We cannot house our community alone. City of Pasadena Council can't do it by themselves, which is why I am definitely excited that I have every single elected official who represents my district in support of my campaign, because now we can have those hard conversations on how we can bring in dollars statewide and federally to house and to create more affordable housing through our community.
All right, thank you, Brandon. Pasadena Rental Housing Board is a new body in the city, created by the voters, approved Measure H, the Fair and Equitable Housing Charter Amendment. As a part of that amendment, the members of the Pasadena Rental Housing Board are appointed individually and collectively by council. How do you intend to support this new body and this new law? 45 seconds.
Well, I'm happy to serve as your vice chair of this rental housing board. So I think that's all the support that it should speak about right then and there. That's a big section of the support. And then also, when I am elected into city council, I plan to choose somebody or appoint somebody who has the same insight and knowledge that I have when it comes to making sure our families are staying housed and being an advocate for those families. I also think that, we really definitely have to do a better job at working together. The rental housing board is not just for renters, let me say that, but it is for us to work together with renters and property owners to make sure that we create sustainable housing and people are able to live in their homes and not be priced out. And they also have protections, so they're not just being kicked out of nowhere. But I think that we really have to re-envision this conversation of the rental housing board and stop separating it as it's those tenants against us. No, it's all of us together, and we have to address it in that such. So I've been committed to Measure H before it was on the ballot, before it was voted into. I was knocking on doors in my district, pushing my neighbors to vote for it, which I'm happy to say that my district actually had the highest vote count on Measure H, and so I'll stop there, sir.
That's your time. Did you need to answer that phone, Brandon?
No.
Was that?
That was a district constituent calling.
Okay. Do you plan on returning district constituents' calls?
I always do.
Okay. All right. Only 10% of the renters who appear in landlord-tenant unlawful detainer courts are represented by attorneys, while 90% of the landlords are so represented, resulting in tenants typically losing their cases and being evicted. Would you support the city providing money to fund legal representation for low-income Pasadena tenants appearing in landlord-tenant courts? 60 seconds.
So that's something that we as the rental board have started just a very little bit to talk about. I think we have to go into a deeper, more conversation about it. And that's the thing, you know, I knocked on somebody's door the other day and their landlord tried to raise their rent $800 in 30 days. And then after that, you know, now they're trying to forcibly buy them out because, you know, they wouldn't follow the landlord didn't follow the law. And so people are really scared right now to try to keep their house, and we have to make sure that they are protected. And so as I can't speak for the city council, but I would bring the conversation up. But as the vice chair of the rental housing board, we have started to have those conversations of seeing how we can help, and is there room for us to help? And if there is not, then yes, we will advocate with the city council to try to create some type of system that will support that.
All right, thank you, Brandon. Moving along, and we are making some good headway. Brandon hasn't heard this joke yet, but let's see if it still works. Only 90 more questions to go. It was a much more livelier audience earlier. We're trying to fill the time right now, right?
I mean, I was ready for an hour and a half.
You was
meeting,
ready?
But we only been going for 20 minutes, and we're almost done.
Well, it's because you're talking to yourself. Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. Moving along to our next question. Would you support a vacancy tax? We have luxury buildings that are vacant and they can keep vacant. More regulations of Airbnb and better enforcement of penalties. 30 seconds.
Yes. You have buildings. The famous building in Pasadena at this point is Luke's Hospital that's been vacant for about 15 to 20 years. And you're talking about housing our homeless population and give them social services and services that they need. That could have happened in one building, in one swap, if we really had the ideal to help each other out. So yes, yes. 30 seconds, yes.
Thank you. Moving on to public safety, Brandon. What policing standards, if any, do you feel your district needs or must have? What policing standards, if any, do you feel your district could do without? 90 seconds.
Just for the record, can I ask for 2 minutes, please? Policing is a big issue in my district. So I'm just gonna take liberty and just do 2 minutes. So
let me check. Okay.
Thank you. With policing, and I'll just say this, policing is an issue in my district because, number one, we have the highest shootings out of all the districts combining. But what we really have to do is we have to really change the fact of how we police our neighborhoods, right? And there's conversations that I've had with previous chiefs that instead of your officers driving by the parks, how about you get bicycle officers to ride through our parks and actually have engaging conversations with the people that are in the park. That's number one. Number two, everybody knows about the issue that happened at Washington Park. And there was somebody, I won't call no names, but they wanted to get more park safety specialists in our parks. I'm not against park safety specialists, but at the end of the day, park safety specialist does not do anything for us after hours. And so a lot of our homeless issues are happening after hours, and we have to have more funding so that our Hope and Port team are actually carried out 24 hours in a day instead of 9 to 5. And that's how we really get our community to be helpful. And then at the end of the day, you know, ShotSpotter is only in 3 of our districts. If you're gonna have them in 3, why not have them in all 7? You know, you cannot just continue to target one area in our city. But if we all are talking about this being one city, then treat it like it's one city. Northwest Pasadena has always been treated at the bottom of the totem pole for so long. And it's time that we change that, and we have to have a voice on our city council that is not afraid to challenge what the status quo is, especially when it comes to policing in our community. Because at the end of the day, it is still brown and black lives who continue to be killed in our community, and nobody is saying anything, and nobody will say anything until it's your son that you have to plan a funeral for. And so, yeah.
Thank you, Brandon. We're still talking about budgeting, and we're talking about budgeting disparity on public safety. Why aren't we seeing the housing department budget increase? Can you answer that in 30 seconds?
But I think the reason why we're not seeing the housing budget increase is because it's all about priority, right? And I won't call no names, bear no blames, but certain people don't see housing as a priority. And that's fine, but we also have to change the narrative in making sure that we have people that are on our council that see housing as a need, and making sure that, yes, because you own a home, we want to make sure that your children and your grandchildren can own a home at some point as well. And so that's the point, and that's where we're trying to push towards.
All right, thank you. Coming up on just the last couple of questions. Thank you all for being here. And Brandon, thank you for being here. Public safety includes the safety of our unhoused neighbors and the stability of our neighborhood. We spend on police equipment. What about other services, support for the community that protect residents that are not weapons like housing, additional mental health services, and additional mental health support? 90 seconds.
I don't even know if I should tell you guys this.
Please.
But as you guys know, our city has just went into a contract with the county to get the new property or buy the new property on Lake and Villa. What they're not telling you is that that is going to be county services, meaning that there will be very little amount of people that comes from Pasadena that will be served there, because that will be a county-wide place for people who live in the county to get services. So imagine everybody from the county of Los Angeles, from Pomona all the way down to Long Beach, all the way up to Lancaster, who need services, and we have those beds available. They will get those services before some of Pasadena people that get those services that need them. This is a direct issue for me, because just 4 months ago, one of my closest friends had a mental health episode, and I went to 3 hospitals to get him help. And every last hospital said that we couldn't serve him because we didn't have a doctor on staff to serve him until 7 o'clock in the morning. So guess what we did? We stayed in that hospital all night long with my friend until 7 o'clock in the morning, until somebody came on staff. We really have to start looking in between the lines. When our city council is proposing things to us, we have to start reading in between the lines to see lines, not lies. Take it how you want to take it. Take it how you want to take it. We have to start reading in between the lines so that we can see if these things are really serving our population. At the end of the day, yes, we do have a public health department, but our public health department does not serve our mental health. And we have to start looking at these things to make sure that with our tax dollars are going back into the residents of Pasadenians.
Thank you, Brandon. Before we get to, and that was our last question, I'm going to take liberty and ask another question. And you can answer it or you can decline to answer it. Okay? And then we'll, like I said, we'll get to your closing statement. Do you have a comment on Councilmember Jones not being here tonight?
The proof is in the pudding. You know, there's a person by the name of Maya Angelou. She said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So you take it for who you want to take it for. You take those words for what you want to take it for. But when people choose where they want to show up in our community and cannot show up everywhere, that should tell you something. The flip side of it is that we have to get to work. The people that these laws and our city council are representing, they have to work for us. And if they don't, then people that live in our district have to get to work to make sure that we elect the right people to represent us. So believe them.
Well, I assume you accepted answering the question. You certainly didn't decline. Closing statement, 3 minutes, go.
I need you. I need you because our community needs somebody that is sitting on that city council that is not afraid to ask the hard questions, that is not afraid to read between the lines, and I cannot do this by myself. At the end of the day, with the district having the most complex needs, we need a person that is not afraid of the status quo. We need a person that is not afraid to go and do the hard work, and that has been doing the hard work. I didn't start this thing when I applied for the appointment. I didn't start doing community work when I ran against John in our last election. I've been doing this since I was 15 years old. And that's who we need, somebody like that to run in this race and to win in this race that has a voice not only for special interests, but has a voice for the entire community. At the end of the day, I need your support. And so I'll be remiss if I don't ask you. I need you to help me knock on doors. I need you to help me make phone calls, because every door that we don't knock on is a vote that we can't get. District 3 has the least amount of voters in all of our districts. 2020, 19,000 people lives in our district. A little bit over 11,000 people are registered. 2022, 2,600 people voted. 2017, 19,000 people in our district, 11,000 people are registered. Only 1,200 people voted in 2017, and that was the most our district has ever seen. Let me keep going. 2013, 19,000 people in our district, 11,000 people are registered in our district, and 963 people voted in that election. That was the most our district has ever seen, and that was with 3 candidates. There's an issue, and it's because our people do not believe that they're being represented in our community, and we have to change that. So I need your help. Help me change it. Thank you. Thank you.
Brandon Lamar, thank you. Thank you. Brandon, a round of applause. And before we bring Allison up, I'm not sure if we touched on this earlier, that this election for a District 3 council seat is for a 2-year term. And in 2 years, the seat will be back up for election. That is because of how the charter is structured or written, and the vacancy of the seat by the late John Kennedy. Councilmember Jones was appointed to fulfill John Kennedy's term, and that was for about 2 months, and then he was appointed again to a 2-year term, and then the charter calls for us to have an election, and that's how we end up here now. And then, as I said a little bit earlier, it'll be another election. So we'll be doing this again in 2 years, either with an incumbent or with an incumbent. So thank you all for being here this evening. I'm going to call Allison Henry back up, and thank you for your time.
Great. Okay. Excellent. Thanks, James, and the Conversation Live and all the team that helped us live stream. Thank you, All Saints, for hosting us. Thank you, Vincent DiStefano and LA Progressive and Lawrence Todd and Pasadena for All and LA Forward Institute. And thank you all for hanging in there and making this democracy look like it does, right? People powered. So with that, have a great evening and please grab food if you haven't already. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.